What's up, everybody? My name is Blake Holmes. This is Hot Takes with Holmes for the channel of Nuggets Nation 21. I hope that you guys enjoyed the rebirth of the show a couple of weeks ago. I apologize that this episode is coming up a little bit later than we had anticipated, as circumstances unfortunately did not allow us to record over the past 2 weeks. Regardless, today I'm joined by my co-host Jacob Underwood as we do something a little bit different than you've seen on the show before. Today, we've decided to make a tier list for all of the starting point guards for the top 16 seeds in the NBA, the top 8 in the Eastern Conference, and the top 8 in the Western Conference. It was released today that the NBA is expected to go to a 22-team season, closing it out. So this is just the top 16, but a lot of news coming out with basketball officially being set to come back, most likely on July 31st. With that being said, I do have some announcements that I wanted to go ahead and make before we jump into it. I wanted to start out by saying that we here at Hot Takes with Holmes stand with the Black Lives Matter movement, and that change is absolutely necessary going forward. It has been too long for us to sit in complete silence while innocent human beings are murdered by people we should be looking to for protection, all because of the color of their skin. We as a country need to begin to hold the perpetrators of these crimes accountable instead of letting them walk for these injustices against these people. For the lives of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and many, many others, we stand with them in the fight, not only against racism among the general public, but the racism that has been systematically present in our country. Keep protesting, keep fighting for the rights of human beings everywhere, for all lives cannot matter until Black Lives Matter. Moving on, let's jump into it and rank some point guards. So here we are. This is the list that you can see right here. The basically the playoff point guard tier list. I wonder who made this list. Oh, look, it's me. So be sure to give me a follow on Twitter. Obviously, like I said, my links will be down in the description along with Underwood's down there. What we've done here is we've taken every point guard from the top 16 teams seeding-wise in the NBA, and we're going to rank them. We're doing things a little bit differently than we normally would on a normal podcast, and what our plans are, we want to turn this into a series, do the point guards, the shooting guards, small forwards, so on and so forth. And as you can see, 16 point guards, 6 tiers. This is going to be tough, and I also want to preface this video by saying just because we put a certain point guard in a certain tier, that does not necessarily mean that is what we think of them in general. Someone might make an A tier here that might be a B tier when you look at the entire league compared to some of the other talent that's available. So this is just strictly playoff related. I want to go ahead and start with this and say, I think you'll be in agreement here. I want to go ahead and get the F tier, at least a couple of them out of the way real quick. First one, DJ Augustin. Don't get me wrong. Like DJ Augustin, he's a very consistent player. He's not going to throw away a game for you. Actually won a game with a game-winning shot against the Raptors last year in the playoffs. I just, compared to the rest of the talent on this list, he doesn't really compare. As far as his stats go, the dude averages around 7 points per game, pretty sure. Not going to, like I said, not going to throw away a basketball game. He's a polar opposite from a guy like Markelle Fultz on the bench who's boom or bust with the way he plays. I think he belongs in the F tier. Do you disagree with that, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, that's a good place to put him. He's also been in the league for 46 years. So when you look at the longevity, he does have that on some of the other point guards. But even back in the days when he was the starting point guard for the Bobcats, he's been around for a while. He's a good veteran to have, but based off of the talent, the rest of the playoff field, point guard field shows F is a good place for him.
And you're talking about this guy from the University of Texas. Like I said, Augustin, he's got a steady play style. He's not going to throw a game away for the Magic, and in the position they're in, clearly it's working. They made the playoffs for the past 2 years, or they're in position to make the playoffs for the last 2 years. So, and I think he's a good veteran to have, like I said, maybe mentoring Markelle Fultz right behind him. The next one, I don't know how your love for him is these days because he's not a Celtic anymore. But again, this is strictly based off of the talent in the playoff field and because he doesn't really play. He's the listed point guard, but he doesn't really play a whole lot of point guard for them. It's Avery Bradley. His defense is good. He's a spectacular defender. Got snubbed from the all-defensive team one year because of Devin Booker, a game where Devin Booker dropped 70 and he didn't even play. So, but based on the talent that we've seen here and based on what the Lakers do as far as a squad, I just don't see him making it any higher than D. We know LeBron James plays the point guard position a lot for that Lakers team, but still, again, a valuable asset to have, especially in his defensive game coming from the Lakers.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You have to think about it like this. he's listed as a point guard, but he's always been more of an off-ball guard. He hangs out in the corners. Um, I mean, rarely does he ever actually handle the basketball, get high assist numbers. So if we're viewing him as a point guard, you have to view him in that F category. Like we said, defense is tremendous. I believe it was Jalen Rose, I may be mistaken. He made some comment that said, how can he be all defense when he got 70 dropped on him? And like Blake mentioned, he didn't even play in that game. That's probably how that happens. But yeah, Avery Bradley, not even really a point guard in my opinion. So F tier as well.
And like I said, the main reason that he is listed, this is, again, another preface in this video, these are the listed point guards for each team. This isn't necessarily something that, if we were going based off of who plays it the most, it's probably LeBron James we put on this list. But he is listed as the small forward for the Lakers, not the point guard. That's why Avery Bradley is on the candidates here. So we're just going to go individually. For those of the two that I mainly want to get out of the way in the first place, we're going to go individually because I am interested to see some of these are tough when it comes to when you're stacking them up with the rest of their talent. I want to go ahead and throw it over to you for this next one. Patrick Beverley, we know the incredible defender he is. The thing with me is he, on the offensive end, he doesn't really add a whole lot. Only about 4 assists per game. The Clippers don't need a lot of offense, though, obviously with Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Montrezl Harrell, Lou Williams. But to me, Patrick Beverley at first is a D-tier point guard. I'll say D for defense, but I'll leave it up to you. Where do you think he stacks here on this list?
Yeah, Patrick Beverley, like you mentioned, a tremendous defender. That's where he makes his living, is on the defensive end. I was going to put him in the C tier, but I could also see D tier just based solely on he really gives you next to nothing on offense. He'll make the occasional bucket, get out in the fast break with the steal, get a layup, make a three. But when you're looking at the whole playoff point guard field, you don't trust him to take that final shot or find that open man. And that's kind of what I view more in a point guard sense in this list. So people who can come down to the very end, make a good pass, get you a game-winning assist, or get you that game-winning bucket, however it may go. So I'm going to put him in C, but I could also see D tier.
And I wish there really was a tier between C and D, just because, again, that's a tough ask. Because, again, the main thing about a point guard is you have to look and see what each team needs. I'm going to leave him in C tier, actually. I'm going to agree with you in this sense because in the role that he serves for the Los Angeles Clippers, they don't need offense. They just need, in fact, aside from maybe Kawhi Leonard, he's the best defender on the team. They need that type of dog mentality in the backcourt. We'll leave him in the C tier for now. Also, I will say, of course, we are open to change our minds later, but I agree with you. For what the Clippers are looking for, what the Clippers need, he serves that role really to perfection. They don't need a ton of offense from their point guard. We'll leave them in the C tier for now. Up next is Eric Bledsoe. To me, Eric Bledsoe is not the same player that he used to be. Phoenix Suns, Eric Bledsoe was a lot better than Milwaukee Bucks Bledsoe. I'm not saying that that's a knock on him. He's still a solid NBA point guard. To me, I have to rank him between the C and D tier to just, again, compared to the rest of the talents on the board. It's just so hard because with a team that is dominated by the 2 stars and Giannis Antetokounmpo and Chris Middleton the way it is, I know teams can forget about Bledsoe, but he hasn't given us a reason yet this season anyways to show that he deserves to be a way high spot on this list. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Eric Bledsoe, I mean, he does what he does for the Bucks. When you have Giannis and Chris Middleton, you really don't need a point guard that facilitates or really even finds the open man. Giannis is going to run the point a lot of the times, that point forward position. He'll get out in the break. Bledsoe makes the occasional three. He plays pretty good defense. Scary Terry and him had that rivalry a few years ago. That's probably the peak of his career since the vintage Suns days, like you mentioned. But yeah, D tier, F tier for me, right around there. I guess D, just because thinking about the people in the F tier, he is better than them, in my opinion. So I'm going to put Bledsoe in the D tier.
And we'll go ahead and leave him in the D tier for there. Like I said, like we both said, not the same player he used to be. Has taken a tumble since his Phoenix days when he was the star of the show for the Suns. Up next, we have Malcolm Brogdon. Malcolm Brogdon, if you remember, made headlines. Rookie of the Year, former Rookie of the Year as a second-round pick. Dunked on LeBron. Obviously, the career highlight for him. He's in Indiana now when he was in Milwaukee. When you talk about a guy like Brogdon, Brogdon is a guy that, as I talked about with DJ Augustin, he doesn't turn the ball over a ton, but in a sense, he's also a better offensive prospect than a guy like Patrick Beverley. I think he's a good blend between the two. However, The thing about Brogdon that is so hard to judge for me is that he doesn't do anything great. He doesn't do anything excellent, but he's not terrible at anything, if that makes sense. He's average across the board. And in a sense, that's what Indiana needs. That's something that Indiana needs. To me, at first, I'm ranking him in the C tier. What are your thoughts?
C tier is good. Really, the only thing that he is very, very good at is free throw shooting. I don't know if he still leads the league, but I know there was a time where he was over 90% from the charity stripe. But yeah, no, I mean, he can do all things. He can go finish at the rim. He can knock down threes. I mean, he's still in a position where he doesn't have to be that main focus scorer. He can just play his game and let it come to him. He doesn't force a whole lot of shots. So yeah, C tier is good. And in the future, he may have room to move up even to that A tier. He has that type of potential.
He's also a member of the very exclusive 40-50-90 club, 40% from the field, 40% from three, 50%, 50% from the field, and 90% from the free throw line. Stephen Curry and Steve Nash, part of that exclusive club. But yes, Malcolm Brogdon really does it all. And for this Pacers team, Victor Oladipo is coming back, has come back, actually made a mark in his return to the hardwood. It'll be interesting to see what Brogdon's able to do this postseason. And the NBA is going to be back most likely July 31st. We cannot wait for that.
Very excited. Very
excited. Up next is Mike Conley. This might be a controversial take. I'm going to go ahead. This is Hot Takes with Holmes. I'm going to go ahead and make this case. Mike Conley this season is a D tier point guard. He has not played well. This is his worst statistical season ever. And I'll go ahead and show you based on, I'll pull up the stats here as you guys can see on screen. Memphis, you look at his Memphis years, a great point guard. Averaged 20 points per game one year, but he's been around that 15 points per game ever since 2010. You look down here, he is averaging a very, very low points per game considering his standards. His assists are some of the lowest in his career. The steals is actually tied for the lowest point in his career. And his field goal percentage, I believe it is the worst. Yes, it's the worst shooting season he has ever had in the National Basketball Association. It's just not working for him in Utah yet. So to me, D-tier point guard, but we know the defense that he plays and we know the mentality he's got, easily could sneak back up into the CAB tiers. But for now, to me, he's D-tier point guard. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and we're talking about a guy who at one point was the top, like the highest paid player in NBA history. So to kind of see the fall off is intriguing. And I mean, he does what he does. He's a crafty left-handed shooter. But yeah, D tier is probably the best place to put him. At this point in his career, you really don't expect him to go make that big shot at the end of the game or be able to play the full 48 minutes and be a reliable point guard. Very inconsistent. I mean, there's vintage throwback games where he may get 30, and then there's other games where he's shooting a career low and averaging 12 points per game, which isn't sufficient for a playoff point guard.
Again, Mike Conley, I like how you just mentioned that at one point was the highest paid player in NBA history and also known as a grit and grind player, playing for the Grizzlies with Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph. To me, he is a D-tier point guard based on this season, obviously. Up next is Spencer Dinwiddie. For those of you that do not know, Dinwiddie was a two guard before he steps into the point guard role since Kyrie Irving has been out with an injury. That's why Kyrie is not on this list when the season suspended. We'll go ahead and say he was still injured. He was not playing at the time. So unless he's healthy and comes back, we can't know that for now, so Dinwiddie's on the list instead. But still, to me, Dinwiddie might be a B-tier point guard. The dude's averaging 20 points per game this year. He's a very underrated and sneaky guy as far as what his talent allows him to do. And in that Nets offense, he can really put the ball up. He's a proficient three-point shooter. I think personally he's a B-tier point guard. Not quite good enough to get up into the upper echelon of the tiers by all means, but a solid point guard who's seen postseason experience. What do you think?
You know, I like Spencer Dinwiddie's game a lot. He reminds me of Sean Livingston, obviously, the taller point guard frame. Would speculate Spencer Dinwiddie's probably listed at 6'6". That's complete speculation, so I may be wrong on that. But it's a very tall point guard, and he does more than just the post-up game that we saw from Sean Livingston so many times. He can make threes. He's expanded his range, continued to work on that throughout his years in the league. And we've seen him grow since Kyrie's been out. A lot of people deem Kyrie as a cancer, for lack of a better term. He gets into teams. He kind of ruins the chemistry. But I think Spencer Dinwiddie does the complete opposite. It seems like a lot of players around the league really like him. They respect his game. So, yeah, I'm fine with that tier. I think that the main thing to remember with Spencer Dinwiddie is you're getting more than just a set point guard, too. You're getting a mismatch. How many point guards let's just use Kemba Walker, for example. Kemba Walker cannot guard Spencer Dinwiddie just based solely off the height disadvantage that Kemba's faced with. So even more so than just a point guard, you're getting a mismatch at that point guard position, which leads to multiple position mismatches throughout the game and gives you already an advantage starting out with.
I agree. And again, Spencer Dinwiddie, B tier, not quite the guy that you expect to come down. And he's not a Stephen Curry type, a Kemba Walker type, even like you mentioned. It's just, but at the same time, the talent level that he has and the physical standpoint that he shows, he really does have a lot of advantages on some guys on the court. And the Nets, like I said, the offense that they run, he's able to really show that at his full display. Up next is Goran Dragic. Dragic is one of those guys that I feel like every single season I look and think he's not having that great a season. Then I go and look at his stats and I think, why I really underrated him. I don't think he's an upper level point guard by all means, but he is averaging 16 points per game this year, 5 assists per game. That's a little bit low for a point guard that you would expect. Personally, based on the fact that the Heat are in a decent position and he does play the role that they need pretty well, but just not quite on the same level, I'm going to put him on the same tier as Mike Conley right now. I think they're very similar players, but Dragic is that's about his career average is what he's at. You don't really expect Dragic to throw the game away for you on a turnover, a late turnover or anything like that, but not the guy that's going to go out and win you a game like the Heat have in Jimmy Butler, let's just say. So I'm going to put him in the D tier, at least for me, and I can change that depending on what your grade is.
Yeah, I was thinking C tier, D tier. I think the thing with Goran Dragic is he's never been in a situation where he's been like the star of the show. Even when he's been the leading assist leader, scorer, whatever it may be on his team, typically there's somebody that overshadows him or another big team. I don't want to call the Heat a small market team by any means because they're not. But even before Jimmy Butler, he really didn't get a whole lot of publicity. He's putting up starting point guard numbers, above average point guard numbers. But remember, this list is for playoff point guards and how we rank them stacking up against each other. So opposed to the rest of the league, he may be middle of the pack a little bit higher, but in this, I still think he's one of the lower point guards. So C tier, D tier is fine with me. I could see either. Probably leaning more towards D tier just because I value a point guard that can go make a final shot to win the game or hit an open man to win the game. And I just don't feel like I trust him to do that 100% of the time.
It's funny, Dragic actually 1 year finished, I believe it was like 7th or 9th in MVP voting when he played for the Phoenix Suns, but that was a long time ago. He's been with Miami. He might actually be the longest tenured Heat player on the roster now. I'm not 100% sure about that, but in 2014 was that season. So you're talking 6 years ago. Still a solid player, but not quite what he was in Phoenix. We'll leave him in the D tier for now. Again, things could change. Kemba Walker. Kemba Walker is one of those guys that he doesn't have a ton of postseason experience, but he played for the Charlotte Hornets and the Charlotte Bobcats his entire career. This is easily the best team he has ever been on. It's very, very apparent of that with the talent that he has around him. The other thing that I think as well, you were talking about Kyrie Irving earlier being a cancer to teams. I think Kemba Walker, while pound for pound, is Kyrie a better basketball player to me? Probably, but when you look at these teams' situations, I have always been on the fence that said, I think that Kemba Walker is a better point guard for the Celtics than Kyrie Irving was. And to me, based on what we've seen here, he is an S-tier point guard just because, and I'll see what you think as well. The reason why I put him in the S tier is because this is a guy who is no stranger to clutch buckets, is no stranger to these late crunch time situations. He is a guy that's going to go out, and again, this is his first postseason with actually something to prove. He's going to come out, he's going to be inspired, and I think for what the Celtics are trying to do, he is an S-tier point guard, and you'll see that on full display when the postseason comes around.
Definitely, and like I've been preaching this whole time, I like a point guard who can go get the final bucket. Kemba wants the ball. I can go back to his UConn days. He wants the ball in those late game situations. I also think about the growth of the players around him, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown especially. There were reports that came out when Kyrie was the starting point guard that they were scared to shoot the ball. They didn't feel like they were getting their fair share. And Kemba's not selfish at all. He'll allow the younger guys to flourish, and whenever they need him to step up, he's still getting 20 a game. So Kemba Walker, definitely an S-tier player. He does a lot of things that aren't really stat worthy, like deferring the shots sometimes, making the smart play that may not show up on the stat sheet, but he runs that point guard position really well. Has great stamina, and yeah, he never really got deterred playing on those horrible Charlotte teams. Now he comes to Boston with a chance to possibly win it. I believe they're listed as a 3 seed right now, but we'll see how that goes. A very good position for Kemba Walker. Definitely a top point guard in this list. S tier for me as well.
The next one might be the hardest one to judge for me on the entire list, because if you were talking about Kyle Lowry from 2 years ago, this is easily he could have the greatest regular season he's ever had, but to me, when it comes to the postseason, he could be an F tier point guard. Last season, he kind of changed that a little bit. I know it was Kawhi Leonard, the star of the show, that led the Raptors to a championship, but the defense from Kyle Lowry, he had a few good games as the Raptors point guard. Still, I don't think it's enough to get him up here into the A tier, but based on what we saw last year, I am willing to almost put him in the B tier. I'm thinking C or B tier. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Kyle Lowry, we always joked about the 0 points in the playoff game, and he falls apart. He struggles whenever it comes to clutch time. And like you mentioned, he kind of turned it around last year. He was a very crucial part, almost as crucial as Kawhi. I don't know if I'm sold on him, honestly. I don't know if he has the ability to be that star player. And I think about the S tier, and there's no way he's close to that. I'm gonna say B tier, but close to C. It goes back and forth between B and C tier for me, just based solely off the fact of what Kyle Lowry we're going to get. Are we going to get 0 points per game Kyle Lowry in the playoffs, or are we going to get 2 years ago Kyle Lowry? So I'd be okay with either putting him in the C tier or the B tier, based whichever version of him we get.
The big thing that scares me about Kyle Lowry in the postseason is he doesn't have Kawhi this year, and he doesn't, aside from Pascal, who's really just blown us all out of the water with his progression. Aside from Pascal Siakam, he doesn't have the main scorer. I don't think Kyle Lowry can be on a playoff team a second, even the main scorer, not even a second scorer. I think he needs to be the third option. To me, the Raptors just don't have that. They have Pascal as their main scorer, but he's going to have to score a little bit in this postseason if the Raptors want to do anything, and that scares me for Toronto. I'll leave him in the B tier for now, again, based solely off of what we saw last season and the growth that we've seen. Very easily could go either way, though, from B to C tier. I'm not even going to ask your opinion for this one because we both know where this guy's going. This is Luka Doncic, after all. He's an S-tier player. He is a top 10 player easily in the NBA right now. The dude is the entire reason the Mavericks are even close to playoff contention. And I feel pretty confident in saying that. I know they have Kristaps Porzingis, but take Luka Doncic off that team and tell me what their record is. Luka, he's one of those guys that can completely change the outlook of an organization. Dirk's out the door. Dirk's walking out the door. The Mavericks are kind of worried about what they're going to be. Luka comes in, and within 2 to 3 years, he's already got him in playoff contention. Luka Doncic, S-tier point guard, S-tier player. Your thoughts?
Definitely. And it's rare that you get a cornerstone piece like that the Mavericks have. They go from Dirk to Luka seamlessly, really. And Luka's still young. People forget he was playing against grown men when he was 16 years old, playing overseas in the big tournament. So he's no stranger to the competition that is the NBA. And he's only going to get better playing against the best in the world. Still young. What's he, 22, 23 years old right now? So Luka Doncic has the potential to be a top 15 player of all time. He has the old man's game. He has a beautiful step back that reminds you of watching basketball, a mix between current basketball and 80s basketball with how slow it looks, but he gets it off and he makes it. So S-tier player, one of, if not maybe the best point guard on this list.
Luka Doncic is the same age as myself. He is 21 years old, folks. He won the EuroLeague MVP at 18 years old. Just says a lot of things from what he's been able to accomplish at a young age and what he is going to accomplish. And I think, as you said, going to Dallas might have been the best situation for him because he gets the chance to build his brand, a very Dirk-like player as far as what his image shows. And I think he's flourishing to the point that we're going to talk about him as, like you said, a top 15 NBA player if he keeps it up one day. Up next is Ja Morant. It's so hard to judge him right now because I am always one to say I can't really fully judge someone based off of what we've seen in their rookie season alone. But Ja's been something special for the Grizzlies. I think personally, I would put him in the B tier for now because again, we don't really know what to expect from him, so it's hard for me to put him up here in the S and A tier. But based on the impressive run that we saw him in his rookie season and what he's been able to accomplish as far as the leader of the Grizzlies go, I think he's B tier point guard. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, as soon as you mentioned John Morant's name, I thought B tier. He's electrifying. He'll dunk on 2 or 3 people per game. Really needs to work on his outside shot, maybe become a bit more of a selective passer in certain situations. But again, the potential, and a lot of coaches and fans hate the word potential because we all know how that goes. But I think John Morant really does have the potential to be something special in the league. Maybe a poor man's Russell Westbrook when you think about it. But yeah, he can definitely go get a bucket when he needs to.
Welcome back to the podcast. Sorry about that little screen there. As it turns out, my co-host Jacob Underwood was having some technical difficulties as we were recording this in different locations, recording it remotely over Discord. He was having some technical difficulties, so he is not able to finish this episode. However, I will be finishing it up, just going ahead and knocking it out real quick. This next guy that's on the list, I will go ahead and say, I'm going to do this with the least amount of bias that I possibly can. Jamal Murray for the Denver Nuggets. This is a guy that is the definition of inconsistency. If you look up the word inconsistent in the dictionary, his picture should show up. This is a guy that will come out and drop 36, look like the best player on the floor. Then the next night, he'll go 2 of 10 for 6 points and 2 assists. Like, he's just the most inconsistent point guard probably on this list. I can think back to last postseason. He got some valuable experience then with Game 2 against the Spurs in the opening round. The guy was 0 of 8, I believe, through the first 3 quarters. Then in the fourth quarter, he comes out, goes 7 of 7 from the field for 21 points, and wills the Nuggets to that win. Had a big game in Game 7 against the Spurs last year, too. I think because of the potential that he shows in that department, we're going to go ahead and put him in the B tier. Just too inconsistent at this point to be any higher, but the boom potential that he has, he is a B tier point guard in my eyes. Up next is Chris Paul, CP3, the legend himself, a very underrated point guard in NBA history. He plays for this Thunder team, and I will be honest, I thought this Thunder team might win 30 games this year. I did not expect them to come out and be in the position that they are, in a good spot to make the playoffs, and most of that is due to the play of Chris Paul, Danilo Gallinari, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm not going to waste any time here. Chris Paul is an A-tier point guard, the first A-tier of the video. This is a guy who has been through a lot of different situations in his career, had a lot of different teams. This is the first time in a while that he's had a team that he's probably the main scoring option, or at least one of them when you look at the grand scheme of things. So he is an A-tier point guard for getting the Thunder to this point, and he's been here before. He hasn't made an NBA Finals before, no, but he's made the playoffs many, many times. He's got experience. He's got the play style that you want out of the point guard position. I think he is an A-tier point guard, and I don't think there should be any argument there as well. Up next, Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, also an A-tier point guard. He is actually kind of similar to Jamal Murray in the sense that he's kind of inconsistent for the most part when it comes to his game, but he has been a lot more refined. You know a little bit more of what you're going to get out of Ben Simmons than someone like Jamal Murray, and for the Sixers to be in the position they are, they have made the playoffs every single year except for one where Ben Simmons has been there, and the only season they didn't, he was hurt for the entire year. I think Ben Simmons is a very, very good point guard. I love the fact that there's a lot of people out there that say he's not a good three-point shooter, and that's not a secret. It's obviously his weakest point of his game, but I love Ben Simmons for the fact that he doesn't even try to silence it. He's not going to mess around with three-point shots. If he knows he's not going to make it, what's the point of even trying the shot? He gets inside. His mid-range game is very, very good. I like Ben Simmons as an A-tier point guard. And again, the Sixers are going to be a tough team in the playoffs this year. And last, but certainly not least, is Russell Westbrook playing in his first season for the Houston Rockets. This is an interesting choice because I think Russell Westbrook is also a very inconsistent point guard. And coming into a new system, a new team, even though he's got an old teammate in James Harden, I don't know how that's going to translate to postseason success. However, based on what we've seen in the past and the experience level that he brings to the Rockets, he is also an A-tier. We've rounded out the video with 3 A-tier point guards. Westbrook is a superstar. He's a star. He is a great player, triple-double threat every single time he steps on the floor. Obviously, we know the insane records that he has when it comes to triple-doubles. The dude is just an aggressive player, very, very good basketball player, and again, really can bring it to a lot of teams in the postseason. Defense is spectacular. He moves the ball really, really well. And going off ball, I think the Rockets need to run him more on ball, run James Harden off of some screens, and allow Westbrook to get him the basketball. But regardless, knowing what we can get out of Russell Westbrook, he is an A-tier point guard. That is going to do it for this edition of Hot Takes with Holmes. As always, I wanted to thank you for tuning in and listening to the show. If you wanted to fill out a tier list of your own, I have left the link down in the description. You can find it on tiermaker.com as well by searching NBA starting point guards playoffs 2020. Those buzzwords will get you to the list by all means. Be sure to fill one out and tweet it at us. Our social media links are down below, or let me know in the comments what you think of our choices. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. I'd love to hear it. The NBA is right around the corner from being back, and we absolutely cannot wait for it. Once again, my name is Blake Holmes, and for my co-host Jacob Underwood, thank you for tuning into this episode. To close it out, I wanted to go ahead and observe a moment of silence for the lives of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and countless others who lost their lives due to senseless violence in this country. Thank you, and have a great day.